Well, happy Saturday to you. Hope your day and your weekend are going great. I have had a crazy hectic day, which is why I'm 1 minute late. So that means I get to go till 1:06 today. It is 1 p.m. in the afternoon, 1 in the afternoon. I had to go fix one of my signs. I am getting vandalized, which is really disturbing on a democratic level when you see any political candidate's signs being trashed and smashed. But that is what happened. So I've been out re-erecting some signs because that's not going to get us down. I am also officiating a wedding today. That is my day job, so I've got to go to Rothsay for that. And tonight I'm playing bass in a wedding reception band. So that is a very full day, but I want to come to you today, picking up where we left off yesterday, where we established, and hopefully I conveyed to you, the consensus among housing experts that affordable housing does not just happen. And when housing is left to the market, when we're talking about market housing, you will not have enough affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is defined by the CMHC as paying 30% of your pre-tax income on housing, on shelter. And so it is very important to make sure that people can find adequate supply in the market to rent. Now, we know between 25 and 30% of New Brunswickers are renting. And I've mentioned before on these dailies that people who own a home typically, on average, have 20 times more wealth than those who rent. I have a very personal connection with renting that I do want to share with you. And so there's way more than I can attack today when we're just focusing on renting alone between now and 6 minutes after the hour, because I do want to talk first, setting it up with the NB housing strategy for all. So NB housing is the body that is responsible for, and they define themselves as they're responsible maintaining provincial housing facilities and strategies and renting services for landlords and tenants. So all things housing, that is NB Housing. That is a public corporation. Those are public servants. They do great work. The agenda is set by the government and by the Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Social Development. Jill Green, who we've had issues with down here in St. Stephen and in our riding, is the minister of that. So, in a nonpartisan way, I want to discuss this and say if there's good ideas, they are just good ideas. Many of the things are good ideas in this 10-year plan that came out with many, many people from the industry and housing experts, et cetera, et cetera. However, I have heard other housing experts and the Auditor General state that 1 year into the program, when they're looking at it, there are gaps. And that is what the Green Party seeks to address. So instead of going through this, and you can, I'll link to this in the description so you can pull it up if you'd like. But I'd like to start with the targets. There are four main targets in the housing strategy. One of them is to increase housing starts. So we need to build more homes. That's all there is to it. When supply is low and demand is high, you got to increase the supply. So we need to build more homes. And the NB housing strategy is to basically get 6,000 homes started to build every single year. Okay. Number two is to reduce the percentage of New Brunswick households spending more than 30% of their income. So, as we said, if you're spending more than 30% of your pre-tax income, it is considered unaffordable housing. It's not affordable housing, and that's your choice for in the private market, in market housing. But a lot of people who need affordable housing need to be under that threshold to make ends meet. Now, the third target is create conditions, and this is where we're going to zoom in on. Create conditions to hold annual rent increases at an average of 2.5%. And the percentage of change in average home prices to 4.8%. Okay, so those are a couple of targets that they have. I want you to remember that. 2.5%. And four, the last one, decrease the number of households in need of subsidized housing to 7,500 by 2026. This acknowledges there are 11,000 households on the wait list for affordable housing and for subsidized housing. So that is up to 12,000 now. It is actually growing since this report came out in 2023. And again, this is the urgency. This is the crisis that we have seen coming for a very long time, which is why, and it's important for you to know as members of St. Croix and this community, because when I knocked on doors, I do see people renting very concerned about their rent increasing year over year. One gentleman told me his rent just went up 14% because there is no rent regulation. Which brings me to my own story of renting in Toronto. I just a brief history. And then I think we need to continue tomorrow with our very specific concrete plans around rental protections. But I went to undergrad, lived at home during that time, went to Ottawa University, then went off to Korea where they provide you an apartment. So I had housing at home with my parents, then housing in Korea, then came back and lived in my in-laws basement in Ottawa with my wife. We had been married a year ago. Naomi and I got married in Korea, and then came. We went to Korea together, got married in Korea, and came back. And then we moved to Toronto for grad school to get our master's degrees, and that is where our rental journey began. And this was even outside of a rental crisis, I would say. It was kind of, slim pickings, but normal supply. We drove to Toronto one day, knowing we started grad school in the fall, and we started looking at essentially basement apartments. We chose a basement apartment where it was just, we walked in, there was no separate entrance. We lived downstairs with a lady who taught piano lessons at 8 in the morning while we were up to our eyeballs and reading and studying and writing papers. So that was really a strain, but we had a place. We found a place, but things weren't going well. Within 9 months, we looked for a rental apartment. We found an apartment. And we had homestay students in order to make ends meet. So we got a 3-bedroom apartment. And because we had been familiar with Koreans, we found a Korean agency that put Korean students in the other 2 bedrooms and keeping those rooms filled with tenants while we studied the rest of our master's degrees was a major challenge because a lot of them were landing, paying us room and board for 2 or 3 months, and then immediately finding kind of one of those famous Toronto rooming houses where you pay $200 a month and there's 12 people in a house designed for 4 or something. So that was a major challenge for us. Then after we graduated, I got a job in ministry and I moved up and we started renting in a townhouse complex. And again, the rent was reasonable. Then we moved down to another apartment building for affordability issues. And then we moved again and started renting a house in around Yonge and Sheppard in Toronto. So we kept moving and renting, always a place to land, but knowing that the rent was increasing every time. But because of rent controls and rent regulations in Ontario, we could check and make sure, because it was pegged, there was a cap on how much rent we would have to pay. And as struggling graduate students with student debt and just out of school, we knew that that was it's going to go up, but it wouldn't go up in a way that we wouldn't expect or know. As of right now, landlords have to give 6 months notice for a rent increase. They cannot increase the rent within the first 12 months, 12 months, but they do need to provide a notice for an increase. And of course, rents typically do go up. So I want to hold it there and talk more about renting in St. Croix, renting in New Brunswick, and exactly what the Greens are going to do in light of the NB 10-year housing strategy around keeping measures around keeping the rents at 2.5% increase. Because guess what? In the first year, it's easy to say that, but it didn't work at all. We need strong rent controls, which is why the Green government wants to create measures that mandate that rents cannot go any higher than 2.5%. So join me tomorrow more about rent, and then we will move into how we are going to do property tax reform and protect homeowners. That is number one on the 5 things that I plan to bring to you as your MLA and work on. Affordable housing. It is a complex issue, but it's something we can tackle together with political will and legislation to make sure everyone can afford